What I'm going to do is show you how to graph in Google Sheets using the data set that we looked at today in class for the article, "The Ground Has Gas." We talked about the relationship between the nitrous oxide concentration in the soil versus the amount of nitrous oxide that ends up in the atmosphere, and then also the relationship between the concentration in the soil and temperature. So I'm going to show you how to graph this data right here so that your graphs will end up looking like these two graphs that we looked at today. So we're going to graph the N2O concentration in the soil versus the N2O emissions. And then secondly, you're going to graph temperature versus the N2O emissions. Something that's important if we're looking at this graph, you can see here temperature is on the x-axis of the graph. It's important that you put that variable first in your spreadsheet, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I'm going to show you my Google spreadsheet. What I did was I pulled these labels, so N2O concentration and N2O emissions, and then I pulled the numbers that correspond with that. So the N2O soil concentration here in green, and then the N2O emissions here in black, and then again the temperature in purple. So let me show you what my spreadsheet looks like. So we're going to be doing two separate graphs. The first graph is the N2O concentration versus the N2O emissions. And I'm just going to quickly, you're not going to use this in your graphing, but I just want to point out that I put the numbers that I want in the x-axis first. So here I have one data set and I put my x-axis first, and then this is my second data set and I put the x-axis first. So N2O concentration is on the x-axis in this graph, and then temperature is on the x-axis in this graph. So those go first. So I'm going to go back here and just delete this because we don't need that information. And then I will delete that row. Okay. So what you're going to do is one graph at a time. You highlight all of the cells. So each one of these is a cell. And you highlight everything in there, including the words. You would then go up to the word insert. So it says File, Edit, View, and then Insert. So you want to click on the word Insert, and then you would go down to the word Chart right here. I'll click on Chart, and it automatically pops up with this graph. This graph, if you compare it, should look very similar to this graph. There we go. So it made the graph for us. And this type of graph is called a scatter plot. So if you see in my chart editor on the right-hand side, the chart type is called a scatter chart. In general, for this type of data, when you have an X versus Y data set, it's going to be a scatter chart. That's really important. If you click on this drop-down menu, there's a bunch of different types of charts, and you could click on any of them. However, if you scroll all the way down, it says scatter. That's the one you want to use. Something else that you need to add, you would go to Customize over here. So it's Setup and Customize. I'm going to click on Customize. And then I'm going to go down to Series, scroll all the way to the bottom, click on Trend Line. So Customize, Series, Trend Line. And that gives you kind of a better visual representation of what's going on here. This is an example of what we would call a positive relationship. So the trend line is going up, which means that as the N2O concentration goes up, the N2O emissions also go up. As one goes up, the other goes up. And that's what the trend line is showing. So I'll move that over here. And then we're going to do the same thing for the second set of data, so temperature versus concentration. So again, I'll highlight all of the cells, including the words, go up to Insert, Chart, and it already produces my second graph as a scatter plot, which is great. So now I'm going to go add that trend line. So I'm going to go to Customize, Series, scroll all the way to the bottom, and hit Trend Line. This one's not as clear. So this one's more of a flat line, which means that there's really not a trend here, which is also what we discussed in class. So that is how you graph in Google Sheets. The last thing we're going to do here, it's important to title your work. So if you go up to the untitled spreadsheet box here, I'm going to click on that, delete what it says, and then I'm going to type in ground has gas, the title of the work that I'm completing. So you should always give your work a title. The ground has gas. There we go. And that's it.